think it's primarily because I'm a very lazy writer. Um, I haven't really done very much research for any of the stuff that I've written so far, whether it's my blog or my Facebook status updates or my books. So I write basically what I know or from what I know. I work in a bank. I'm interested in Bollywood. I'm an NRI. I'm from Madras. I've lived in Dubai. I've traveled to a few places like London, Africa, Singapore. So I guess most of what I've written is based on my own experiences. Not necessarily something that has happened to me, but something that I'm aware of and can relate to. It also makes for easier writing. I don't think it affects it in any way, except that it helped me for the first two books, because the first book, at least you could say, was semi-autobiographical, maybe 30-40% of it. At least the markets during those times, what happened to my colleagues in the bank, what happened to some of our clients, that is a reflection of what happened in the equity markets during that period of time, 2008, 2009. Banks had a lot of problems. They needed cash. Credit froze, equity stumbled, and all the associated problems. So there was some kind of influence, if you like, of my work on the first one or two books. After that, no, it's just that after a hard day's work, and banking has become a particularly regulated industry these days. So, after spending a few hours with the bank, you look forward to doing something different, and this is about as different as it can get. My last book had very little to do with banking. There was one character who worked in a bank, but beyond that, there's no banking in the book. So I try to keep it. People do ask me if I write on finance or economics. No, I wouldn't want to do that even if you paid me a lot. I want this to be about family, day-to-day things, Bollywood, cricket, something that is a light read and provides scope for a bit of humor. I don't think so. I think I communicate better when I write. In my house, my wife does all the social things. I just sit quietly and prefer to write. That's the way it is. And maybe that's why they call it a learner's profession. It suits me, actually. I'm more positive, and I communicate better with a laptop in my hand. Sometimes I feel that's the only thing I read. Not just once. I've probably read each of his books multiple times. And with a gap of a couple of years, I can read it all over again. And I think I read it almost every day for at least half an hour just before bedtime.
So how has he affected your work and all the writing style?
Well, in my last book, I tried to use little bits on 2 or 3 occasions as my tribute to him. I guess only a person who's an ardent fan of Wodehouse would recognize which bits. I don't even remember offhand, but it's there. And then there's also one character in the first 2 books who's called Harry Boffin, an Englishman. But the Boffin is spelt, I think, though I could be wrong, B-A-U-G-H something M-A-U-G-H-A-M. That again is from Wodehouse. So I like to take little bits from him. That's my tribute, like I said. But the writing otherwise is pretty much my own. Of course, the intention is to be humorous, but the style, I think, is my own. My sister, I have a sister who lives in Canada. For 2 reasons. I think she will be honest enough to criticize if it needs to. And at the same time, the criticism won't be brutal to put me off writing. So she's probably the only one I've taken. Not my first or second work, but I think the last book, I sent it to her and her husband. They did the first read. I think I did that after I sent it to the editor because it didn't work with the editor the first time around. So I felt the need to have someone else read it and give me feedback. It was some of my fellow authors who actually kept insisting. They said, look, I'm not really a social media person, right? I'm not even a social person, period. It came to me because when I wrote my first book, the publishers told me, Penguin, you don't have your Facebook. Oh my God, how will we do the selling? I said, I thought you were going to do the selling, not me. And then, no, that's not how we have to work together. You need to get your network, you need to visit your college, and you need to have your own, socials. So that's when I started Facebook 5 years back, very hesitantly at first. I dipped first one toe, then another toe, and so on. It took me a good 2-3 years to feel comfortable with it. And then a couple of author friends of mine told me, oh, you write such nice posts, but it goes wasted on Facebook. You must really set up a blog so more people can see it. So I took their advice and then started that again very slowly. And there's just so much time you can spend on these things, right? And I'm not very tech savvy. So I go to my wife or my son if I need any help. And he's 17, so he doesn't have very much time to spend on me. So that's how it is. I'm actually looking for advice, not to give advice. Because to be honest, every book is a struggle. Some people do come to me saying, you've written 4 or 5 books, so you're all set. You're never all set. With every book, it's like beginning all over again. The publisher takes an absolutely fresh look at it, may or may not want it, because the trend keeps changing. So, like I said, every book is a struggle, and sometimes you just have to get lucky, I guess. The one thing that I can say is that you need a lot of patience. Your time will come, but it may not come when you expect it to. You might have to. I've known people who have. Look, I've had 5 books published. Okay, I know there are people who write who are far more talented than I am, who have not had a single book published, and I know there are people who are not as skilled as I am in writing, who have been more successful. So it's not just a question of skill. You need to get lucky. Sometimes it's a question of timing. The public tastes keep changing, and you might, your entry point might be just right. So it's any of these factors. But the one advice I would give is not to think of writing as a career too early if you have a choice. You might keep it as an option. If it works, then you can switch over. Otherwise, it can get a little tricky, especially in this era where the number of writers is increasing exponentially, and the number of readers seems to be diminishing, and there are so many other sources of entertainment, right? 100 years ago, 50 years ago, maybe it was books and possibly films. Now there are all kinds of things, so the time that a person devotes to reading is that much less. I write whenever I find time, and there aren't too many people around. It's easier that way, but I'm obviously not one of those authors who can rent a cottage in Switzerland and look at the lake and spend a month or 2. There's a household to run, and there are family members running all around, and sometimes my wife wants to go to the supermarket and she can't find parking, so I have to drive. So I take my laptop with me, and I write in the car while she's inside the supermarket. So we have to make little adjustments like that. And it's about an hour or 2 a day at the most, not more than that. So it's not very difficult. And my books are not those 600, 700 page books. They are more of 250, 300 page books. So it gets done in, if you do it regularly, you get a little more time during the weekends. Sometimes you might skip a day or 2, but it doesn't really matter. There's no publisher standing there saying, "Give me your book." It's we who have to write it and then go and find a publisher. So there's no deadline in that sense. So we take it easy. I don't know because I have never tried. When I wrote my first book, I sent it to 4 publishers, I think, all 4 in India. And the first 2 were rejects. And then the next 2 came on the same day and they both accepted my work. It was a very happy day for me. And for the second book, I went to another publisher because my first publisher wanted a lot of changes which I was not willing to make. I went to a second publisher and they agreed within 2 weeks. So that again was a very pleasant experience. After that, it's been, sometimes it's taken more time, sometimes less. Sometimes I've had to go back and forth, polishing it and finishing it to the publisher's liking. But by and large, it's worked. There was just the poet book, I Stole Her Story. Now that was the diary, a 2012 diary of a girl. That I decided to self-publish because it would have taken a lot of time to find a publisher. By the time it got published, it would be 2014. It wouldn't have made sense. So I got that self-published. But otherwise, I think I've been reasonably lucky so far. And the fact that India is one of the few markets in the publishing world that's still on a growth path, and publishers do encourage authors to contact them directly. So I've been lucky that way.